This is your call to action. Get prepared, America. Economy, survival, energy, disasters. This is USAPrepares.com. Informative radio, educational radio. Interact now by emailing instructor@USAPrepares.com or text at 434-390-7953. Class, please take your seats. Now, your instructor, Vincent Finelli.
Watch the greenbacks tumble.
Oh, boy. Tom, our producer, and I were talking about his truck, and we were diagnosing what might be wrong with it just before airtime. Everyone all set? Cocked? Locked? Blissed? Your dial is set correctly to USAPrepares.com. Dr. Shealy, are you blissed?
Hey, good morning. How do you think?
If I were a betting man, Dr. Shealy, I would say you are blissed.
I am indeed. And you know why? I just finished reading. You know, I love writing my little quips that I get for my newsletter. I just finished one. This one is entitled, "Are Antidepressants More Harmful Than Useless?"
I think I know how that one came out.
And, you know, the latest, it just came out. They also increase the risk of type 2 diabetes. But, you know, we need more research.
So let's prescribe 20 years more.
Right.
And let's see how it works out. Antidepressants. So, Dr. Shealy, for those of us who might not know your opinion on antidepressants, let's see. Are there any sponsors that we can throw overboard? I mean, like in the first 10 minutes of the broadcast?
Every pharmacomafia company in the world. Mm-hmm. I don't know one that I would trust to tell me the time of day.
Well, you know, I don't know how you did it, but what you're talking about is one of the things that I was hoping that we could cover today. And here's what I was thinking early this morning, that when we begin life, we all want to live. I believe we are programmed with the innate desire to live, to avoid harm, and to live as long as possible. I believe that. Do you think that's true, Dr. Shealy?
I agree totally. I think not only to do no harm, but actually we have an instinct to help other people.
I'm so glad you said that, and I totally agree. And here's where this thought process goes. But there's a post on our website that I just put up this morning that talks about doctor-assisted suicide, euthanasia. And euthanasia is legal in Europe, in the Netherlands, Belgium, and Luxembourg. Those are the three countries that allow, maybe even encourage, doctor-assisted suicide or euthanasia. Now, going back to our first statement, we think that you and I think that we're not programmed that way from, genetically. So that means that we would have to be convinced somehow to take our own lives. And I believe that there is some programming going on to tell people through this programming that, hey, it's okay to die. It's okay to kill yourself because, heck, you're in pain, you have a disease, you've lost some connections in your life, some networking, some social networking. Maybe you lost your job, and heck, you really are useless. So here's, we've got a plan for you, and it'll all go away.
Painlessly.
Yeah. So, Dr. Shealy, have I fallen off my rocker, or is this something that is possible that through television, through the media, through movies, that through experimentation, through setting the precedent in foreign countries, that this is really, the Netherlands, they're really a first world country, and And they're leading. They're leading. So if you think, or Belgium, or Luxembourg, so if you want to die, that's good. Do you think it's possible that they've been programmed and we are being programmed through their leading example that death is okay and go ahead and kill yourself? It's good.
Well, it's an interesting way of looking at it, Vince. And you may well remember, you're so young, I'm not sure, but when Governor Lamb was governor of Colorado, he actually made a statement about older people getting out of the way and not plugging up the system.
Well,
I'm paraphrasing it, but essentially, he said they shouldn't be overusing Medicare and that sort of thing. And of course, it brings it to a very, but you've raised an existential question. There is something called commission versus omission. And commission is actively pushing the trigger, so to speak. Omission is omitting those ridiculously life-prolonging but not saving approaches when one is, quote, terminally ill. I mean, it's a fine line sometimes. But once one is clinically beyond anything we know conceivably possible with drugs and other interventions, to me, that's the time to stop using those. On the other hand, I obviously have to say that if someone is in excruciating pain and has a terminal illness, I think it is ethical and helpful, not harmful, to give them adequate narcotics to make it comfortable for them.
And Dr. Shealy, that's completely different from, here's the trigger, go ahead, squeeze it, because it'll be good for you and society, right?
Well, I think that if we think about what's good for society, we'd get rid of most of Congress. That would be the best thing that could ever be done for society right now.
Yeah. They are a problem. And tomorrow night, I'm going to Springfield, Dr. Shealy, and I'm going to introduce a bill. I haven't written the exact wording down, but it's very simple. It's a bill to the Missouri House, and it's just a one-sentence bill. It's very simple. Any representative who votes for any bill to become law without reading and understanding every single word is guilty of a felony punishable by not less than 10 years in jail. Mm-hmm. Now, I have 3 minutes to say this. So that's the first half of my 3 minutes. The second half of my 3 minutes is, and the reason we need to do this is to prevent short elected representatives from being hung from tall trees. Because
you're all hard, Vince.
Well, Dr. Shealy, I think there's a movement afoot where people are furious. They're furious at these boneheads lying and cheating and stealing and doing things to us. Like saying it's okay to be addicted to these mind-altering drugs that will cause a person to be depressed.
Well, of course, it's not only, quote, okay in the legal sense, but encouraged. Right.
And I mentioned on a previous broadcast that I knew a man who had a job. He had a government job, and he felt he was under a lot of pressure. And this was many years ago. And, the stress was really, really tough. And maybe it is tough for some people to have these government jobs where they see person after person after person, and they deny them whatever that person wants. So the government employee is in charge of saying, no, we can't do it, we can't help you, And after a while, maybe it does have an impact on a person. But this middle-aged man, was prescribed antidepressants. And he took them, and the more he took, the more he became depressed. And ultimately, he drove to the top of a bridge on the East Coast, a very, very tall bridge. Parked his car at the top of the bridge, put his four-way flashers on, took his wallet out of his pocket, put it on the dashboard, and jumped off the bridge. And lived. he ended up in the hospital. He got all patched up, and he got home after, I guess, maybe a month or two. And then he was on his antidepressants to make sure he was safe. And he and his wife had breakfast, and they were both going to work early in the morning. They had breakfast together, as they usually did. And he was acting a little weird. And so she left for work first, and he kind of stayed behind. And she thought, nah, something's not right. So she turned around, drove her car back home. His car was still in the driveway. And she was looking for him. And she found him. He hung himself in the basement.
Yeah.
So what I'm saying is, I think that we can be programmed to do the unthinkable to ourselves.
Well, I agree, of course. And yet, there again, let's look at this. So there is nothing that I would do personally to take my life. Mm-hmm. But if I reach a stage of being unable to take care of myself, I don't want any super-duper attempts to, quote, save me. And my personal choice, and I think this is an ancient tribal custom. Sometimes you sort of went off into the woods to die. Mm-hmm. And rather than going off into the woods to die, I prefer to go in my bedroom and close the door and turn on the Gregorian chants. Mm-hmm. But I wouldn't do anything active. On the other hand, I wouldn't allow tubes and IVs and all kinds of breathing machines and all that kind of stuff.
Well, another piece of this, Dr. Shealy, is the Middle Easterners who have been convinced that, if you just strap these explosives on, and you won't even feel a thing, you won't feel a thing. Just strap these on and go into that crowd and hit the button. And what a reward, you're going to get 72 virgins and everything's going to be just great. And, you Class, I was just checking the calendar during the break, and on October 11th, second hour, the Freeze Dry guy is going to be with me. We're going to talk about stories, Army stories. He was in the U.S. Army, and he doesn't like to talk about what he did. So if he wants to tell us, we'll let him tell us. But very interesting man, very interesting. And he and I were on the phone last night. He called me. We talked for about an hour. He's a really good guy. So if you are considering freeze dry food, please consider Freeze Dry Guy. On Mondays, we have the meetup at Ziggy's in Springfield, Missouri, and you're all invited, unless, of course, you're a politician. But if you'd like to join us, Mondays, 5:30, Springfield, Missouri. And this Monday, we're going to talk about the music industry. We wanted to show a video last Monday, but we ran out of time showing the first video called Agenda. But we're going to talk about the music industry and what happens to young people who are talented and how they are coerced into becoming these gyrating images that we see on stage, and how they stick their tongues out, and how they are tattooed and pierced, and they seem to have lost all sense of morality. We're going to talk about why that is and the connection to the New World Order. That's Monday. This Monday at Ziggy's, 5:30. You're all welcome to come, unless, of course, you're a politician. Government employees, you'll need to show your ID. Dr. Shealy?
I love those little afterthoughts, which were big forethoughts.
But they're true, right?
You bet. I'm all the way with you, Big Blue.
So in World War II, Dr. Shealy, my dad was volunteered for the U.S. Army, and he was a sergeant, and he was on a troop ship, a flotilla, headed toward the Philippines. And his flotilla was strafed by Japanese Zeros. And what would happen is these fighter bomber planes would attack the U.S. ships, and they would try to drop their bomb carefully to sink a ship, and they would have a machine gun, and they would shoot and shoot and shoot at the ships until they ran out of bombs and cartridges. So when they were empty and they couldn't fight anymore, they were convinced by their commander that what you do is you pick out the ship of your choice and you dive right into it. And there's critical spots where you pick out critical locations and you dive into it and you commit suicide. So what I'm saying, Dr. Shealy, is we have been led to believe that killing ourselves can be a really good thing. The Japanese did it. We have some Middle Easterners doing it. It's happened in history, and we see it. And I believe we're being encouraged to do it more and more and more, because I believe they're saying, do you know how much oxygen we can save if we have people kill themselves?
Well,
what do we do? What do we do to resist
I
this?
consider it psychosis. I think it is national, social, political psychosis. But other than that, it's just like.
Yeah. What I'm saying, Dr. Shealy, is I don't believe it's okay for a son to kill his mother out of mercy.
Well, of course not. It's not okay to kill yourself, let alone somebody else.
Yeah, well, that's what people are being led to by this programming. They're in pain. They're in pain, so let's end the pain by killing the person. That's where this topic is going. That's the programming that I see coming out of the media. Let's eliminate these useless oxygen consumers. These useless. It's wrong, Dr. Shealy. It is flat out wrong to even think of this.
I am totally with you.
Okay.
You need another one.
Okay. And by the way, euthanasia is up 13% in Holland. It's up 13%. 4,180.
Well, of course, it brings us to several related issues.
You want to talk about them on the other side?
You bet.
Okay, Dr. Shealy and I are talking about euthanasia, up 13% in Holland. 4,188 killed last year. Assisted suicide. We'll be right back. Dr. Norman Shealy's with us. And Dr. Shealy, I was reading a post on the internet about an increasing number of young people harming themselves. For example, in the United Kingdom, there are about 13,000 young girls. I'm talking the ages of 15 to 19 who are harming themselves. They are hurting themselves intentionally, and they're saying that this is because of the increased pressures that they are experiencing from society. And that ties into depression. We were talking about depression. And in the United Kingdom, there are about 80,000 children diagnosed with depression. We didn't have these problems when we were growing up, did we, Dr. Shealy?
No. I mean, it might have been 1% compared to today.
Yeah.
Things have changed for many, many reasons, and most of them start at the government.
Well,
like
yeah, we keep coming back again and again to pointing to the government. It used to be that we had the best food supply in the world, the best safety. We would look at, England and other countries that we considered, pretty close to us in stature, and they had all kinds of food problems and contaminations and toxins and pathogens, and we didn't seem to have it. And I'm talking like the 1950s and 60s. But now when we have an outbreak, it affects hundreds of millions of eggs, chicken eggs, and it involves tons and tons of contaminated meat. We're not you're right. The government is not looking out for us, and they're causing more problems by the second. Which brings me to the point about the government shutdown, Dr. Shealy. Our national parks are closed because of this government shutdown. Now, I think the government shutdown is a really good thing. I really do.
I think it's wonderful, and I think everybody in the country should write every congressperson they know or who represents them and tell them, shut down 90% of the government, we'll be better off.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I totally agree. And here's an interesting component of that. The White House is furloughing 3/4 of the employees because they're considered non-essential. Now, well, really, now
here's a lot.
Here's my question: if they are non-essential, and they're officially designated non-essential, what are we doing employing them? Why would we have them as employees in the first place? Now, I can't think. Well, let me ask you this, Dr. Shealy. When you had a medical practice, did you say, you know what, there's a person we don't need to hire, so let's bring him on? I mean, I remember
in D.C.
I remember working for the bank, and the boss came up to me and said, got a new guy. Vinny, we're going to get you some help. I said, really? Yeah, we're going to get you some help. And I said, well, I don't need any help. The team is fine. We've got everybody we need. Is there something we're not doing? No, you're doing fine. Okay, so why are we getting help from my department? And the boss said, well, it kind of talked all around it. And basically, we were hiring somebody we didn't need for a political reason. Literally a political reason. We hired somebody that we didn't need. And that was the first time I ever heard of anything like that. But there was a financial reason why the bank did it, because this guy was related to the man, his father was going to become mayor of the city. And that was a good thing to hire his son as he was going to become mayor, because our bank would get favors. So, there was a financial reason for it. We were going to get government subsidies at the bank, or we were going to get favors at the bank because we were getting in bed with the government. But maybe that's what this is all about. Maybe that's why 3/4 of the people who work at the White House are getting preferential treatment and favors because they're related to somebody or know somebody, just like that case when I worked at the bank. But Dr. Shealy, the national parks are closed, and those are parks that belong to us, we the people. Now, a group of World War II veterans, I'm talking 80-year-olds, the greatest generation, as they've been called, they stormed the Washington World War II Memorial because they were on an honor flight from the Gulf Coast. And they flew in there to visit the World War II Memorial. Now, many of these men were in wheelchairs. And they arrived, and the memorial was barricaded off. It was tied with police red tape and barricades. And just as in World War II, they took charge. We're talking about men in wheelchairs took charge, and they opened up the barricades. And I believe that if we follow their lead, we can take America back. Because they showed us that men in wheelchairs without guns went against they defied the federal government. The Germans and the Japanese couldn't contain them, and neither could our federal government by telling them they could not go to the World War II Memorial. I think it's awesome, Dr. Shealy. I am in favor of them. I support them. And these are 80-year-olds who are showing us that we can take back America. We just have to follow their lead, support them. And
I'm with you all the way again. I don't think we've ever had a significant disagreement. As a matter of fact, that's.
I'm trying to think if we've had a disagreement, Dr. Shealy.
Well, I mean, I think we philosophically are absolutely on the same page, all the way Big Blue.
Yeah. Yeah, I love it. Now, our our veterans who served to defend America in World War II, we were attacked by the Japanese. Well, our veterans, my father served and fought the Japanese. He enlisted because he felt it was his duty to defend America. Well, those are the men who are leading the charge again. They are brave, and to top it off, our federal government is threatening these men with arrest because they dared to cross the barrier that said they couldn't attend our memorial in Washington, D.C., honoring the veterans, honoring the men who visited on an honor flight and their chaperones. They visited this, and it may be the last time in their lives that they could do something like this. They visited the memorial, honoring them, and they're being threatened by the federal government, threatened of arrest. It is an outrage. And I hope, I'm wondering what the spark might be for us to rally and take back America. This could be the spark, Dr. Shealy. This could be.
Well, I hope it can, because otherwise we are doomed. If we could cut even 75% of government, just 75%, we could pay off the national debt within 10 years or less.
Wouldn't that be wonderful? Dr. Shealy, last Thursday I was at an event where I proposed some legislation to the Missouri State House of Representatives. And there was a man there who was in charge of the department. Now, this is a Missouri department. He was in charge of the department that reviews legislation for constitutionality. And I could see that the three Missouri representatives were stonewalling us. And I really didn't like it. So, in behavior that is not uncharacteristic of me, I decided to cut.
Don't guess what that is, folks. You know.
I said to this guy, I cut right to the chase. I said, how much does the person who makes the most amount of money in your department make? That was my question. He said, I think he said 60 to 65,000. I said, okay. How much does the person who makes the least make in your department? He said 30, 35,000. I said, how many of them are there? And he said 16. I said, I'll tell you what. There's a group of people, about 50 people there. I said, I propose that, or I suggest that you fire them all. And just you stay there, just one of you. And you'll create such a bottleneck in your department that no representative would even consider writing legislation that's more than one sentence. Because if it's longer than that, you wouldn't be able to tell if it was constitutional, and there'd be a bottleneck, and no bills would even get reviewed to be considered for passage. And silence. I can't believe it. Absolute silence. So I recommended, you were talking about getting rid of 90%. Well, I actually recommended something very close to that last Thursday publicly. And I suggested he fire, his entire department. And I was being very kind by saying, we'll let you stay. What I really meant, but I didn't say it, was let's keep the $35,000 guy, and the rest of you, including you, need to be fired. Dr. Shealy, there's a very interesting story on the internet, and it deals with Legionnaire's disease. Legionnaire's disease. What's happening in the United Kingdom is people are buying commercially produced compost in bags. Like somebody might go to one of these big box stores or the Chinese factory outlet and buy compost. Well, in the United Kingdom, there are commercial bags of compost that were traditionally made with peat moss and peat, and people would open those bags and put them on their garden and their flowers and so forth. Well, they're getting sick. Some have died. When we come back, I'd like to talk about handling that and what your thoughts are in handling compost because they've changed the composition. And now it can be deadly handling compost. I'm not saying in the United States, but in the United Kingdom, it's a problem. Dr. Shealy and I will be right back. Class, Dr. Shealy and I are talking about Legionnaire's disease, and people have died in the United Kingdom because they're using compost, commercially produced compost that you buy in these big bags at the box-type stores. And there is a bacteria or a pathogen that seems to do very well in it. They've changed the composition from being made with peat to using bark and sawdust. Now, you just heard an advertisement for Terraganics. I know Eric Lancaster. He's Senior Vice President of Terraganics, and he recommends recycling your own food waste and vegetable waste and so forth, and you can avoid purchasing commercially produced compost. So, Dr. Shealy, there are things that we need to be concerned about when we put our hands in this compost and spread it around, respiration and those kinds of things. What do you suggest we consider doing to minimize the effect of getting these pathogens in our respiratory system or through our skin or cuts or things like that? What can we do?
Well, if there's any dust, so to speak, if it's really dry, then I think you really ought to wear a protective mask.
Okay.
And that's true whether it's compost or even hay of various kinds. I like prairie grass hay, for instance, for mulching in my garden. And it's very dusty, and it's a wonderful mulch, but it is better to wear a mask if you don't want to inhale it. On the other hand, I have been using compost, which is a combination of cow or horse, sometimes chicken manure with all kinds of kitchen waste and garden waste. And I compost it for a minimum of a year, but I've been using that for the last 68 years. And will continue.
And it works great, right?
Oh, it's terrific. I wouldn't think of buying, commercial so-called fertilizer instead.
Mm-hmm. Dr. Shealy, I got a little off topic. I received a call from a man who lived in Canada, and he told me he had an advanced case of cancer, and this was years ago, and we talked about it, and I said, do you know what might have caused it? And he said, oh, yeah, I know exactly what caused it. He said that he worked in the mining industry, and what they did was they took timbers that were pressure treated with arsenic, and they would take a chainsaw or a saw and they'd cut them up, and the airborne particles of this pressure treated lumber were inhaled by all the guys working, shoring up the mine. And then he said, and also, we had a lot of growth, and we used insecticides, we used herbicides, and so basically he said he sprayed poisons and herbicides, and he inhaled it, and he got it every way he could possibly get it, through his skin, through his respiratory tract, every way. And so he blamed it on that. So when we talk about these particles, this dust that we can inhale, there are living organisms in some of it, right, Dr. Shealy? That could be absolutely deadly.
With living organisms. And, of course, if there's been pesticides or herbicides, maybe worse than the living organisms is the poisons, like arsenic.
Yeah.
Even a thing can only eat so much arsenic and survive.
Right. If is it more dangerous to inhale a toxin on average, or get it on our skin? Which is where are we the most susceptible to a toxin, Dr. Shealy? Through our blood, through a cut?
It depends on the poison, if you will.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Of course, the skin, does absorb remarkable amounts of things like this. But if you drink it, eat it, or swallow it, or breathe it, it unquestionably, it's the end. you don't have to worry about whether or not it gets in through the skin. It's in. So in general, it's going to be more toxic taking it in. But it's all relativity.
There you go, class. Dr. Norman Shealy and I are going to be right back. And Dr. Shealy, if you've got something that you'd like to share with us, that'd be great. And we can start with that. And I've got a bunch of questions that I've received. So coming up on the other side of this top of the hour news and commercial break, Dr. Shealy and I will be right back. NormShealy.com. NormShealy.com.
This is your call to action. Get prepared, America. Economy, survival, energy, disasters. This is USAPrepares.com. Informative radio, educational radio. Interact now by emailing instructor@USAPrepares.com or text at 434-390-7953. Class, please take your seats. Now, your instructor, Vincent Finelli.
Everyone all set, cocked, locked, blissed. This is hour number 2 of USAPrepares.com. Dr. Shealy's with us. Dr. Shealy, you know, I just checked the news during the top of the hour break, and despite the government shutdown, the federal government is feverishly working on setting up more gates, more barriers to stop visitors from visiting the World War II Memorial. They've threatened them with arrest. I'm talking about wheelchair-bound veterans. They're threatening them and their chaperones with arrest. Now, reports include that these government minions, at least 7 staffers, are armed with a bulldozer, and they are determined to stop us from visiting our landmark, the World War II Memorial. Now, my question is the federal government trying to incite a riot? What are these boneheads thinking?
Vincent. The operant word. You're giving them credit
boneheads?
for thinking.
Well,
that's an oxymoron when it comes to government.
You are right, Dr. Shealy. But seriously, I mean, here are men who have flown on an honor flight from the Gulf Coast to visit the memorial. And they are being prevented. And they have these, like, barricades that have the police tape, do not cross and all that. But, you know, these veterans decided that, you know, they spent a lot of money to get there. They came en masse and to visit the memorial, probably, you know, a highlight of their lives. And they're prevented. So they just decided to move the barriers and to go visit anyway. It's not like they're spray painting graffiti on the memorial. It's not like that. These guys are just standing there, wheeling their wheelchairs, looking around with their chaperones, paying respect to their fallen brothers in arms, and remembering with each other what they did for the United States of America. And then the federal government is threatening these people with arrest. It is a national sin that our federal government is perpetrating on these heroes. It makes me angry. And
name
yes.
me something that the federal government is doing that isn't an offense.
I can't think of anything. I mean, think of anything. You know,
honest to God,
Dr. Shealy, if you look,
the most crooked, criminal organization in the world. I mean, not just in this country, but all over the world. It is the mafioso at its best or worst, whichever you want to use.
Well, I called when I went to the meeting last Thursday, the Locke and Smith Foundation meeting to propose legislation. I said I was a member of one of the largest crime syndicates in the United States. As a matter of fact, I'm a voting member of one of those syndicates, and I'm a committee man for one of those syndicates. Not that I support or endorse anything that they're doing. I'm just a registered voting member so that I can see what these thugs are up to. And I introduced myself. I mean, the first few words I said was, I am a registered member of one of the largest crime syndicates in the United States. And I met one of those two parties. And it's a disgrace. It is an absolute... They have both failed us. They are two sides of the same coin, those both syndicates. Dr. Shealy, I'm sorry, I'm absolutely furious about what they're doing to our veterans. I knew a man, he's deceased now, and one of the last things that he did in his life was go on one of those honor flights. And I used to visit this man in our little community. He was in his 80s, and I used to visit him a couple times a week, and I'd call him every day to check on him and see how he's doing. I really liked him. His name was Paul, and he went, he was a U.S. Army veteran, and he and I would talk about, the war and things, and he was a very dear friend. He and I spent a lot of time together. I met him when I came to Missouri, and he would talk about the honor flight and how great it was and how wonderful his chaperone was and how the camaraderie. And I think about that, and I think about these government thugs preventing these other men from doing what Paul did, going on that honor flight to visit the World War II Memorial in Washington, D.C.
Well, again, you're giving credit to idiots. When you talk about...
I don't mean to. I really don't mean to give them any credit, because
I'm
they don't...
being semi-facetious, but the problem is the government is so impossible that I hope the shutdown lasts for the rest of the year.
Well, actually, we're going to do a program about this on Friday. Sam Bushman and I were talking last night, and we're going to talk about how great, how wonderful this government shutdown is, because we're going to propose that in order to restore any of these jobs that have been shut down, they look at each job classification, each function, one at a time. And they say, is this absolutely necessary, yes or no? If it's not necessary, we're not bringing it back. If it's sort of necessary, we'll bring it back with the intent to shut down that job at a specific time. And we'll do it one at a time. Now, if we're going to look at these job classifications one job at a time, it'll take decades to bring them back.
I like it.
Oh, geez, so... Dr. Shealy, what would you like to talk about? I have some questions, but what would you like to share with us that is in the fore of your mind as a medical doctor, a researcher, a Native American medicine man, a surgeon, an author, a talk show host, a farmer? What would you like to share with us?
Well, I think the most significant one of the day is the whole question of antidepressant drugs. In my opinion, it's not a question of whether they are helpful, because they're not. It's a question of just how bad they are. In other words, are they not only not useful, which is true, but also dangerous, which is also true. In other words, the use of antidepressant drugs, not only, statistically speaking, has no overall improvement out of depression, but it increases the risk of suicide at all ages. It increases the risk of diabetes at all ages. It increases weight gain at all ages, or they do, and they're just dangerous, period. I think they are right up there with the statin drugs, and maybe even worse than statin drugs in their more immediate effects.
Wow. Dr. Shealy, antidepressant drugs causing the increase in suicides, weight gain, diabetes. I mean, those are three plagues that are upon us. I know so many people who would love to be thinner. I really do. And they can't figure it out. I know I know of people, and I've read about people who have attempted suicide. And so many people have diabetes. Now, Dr. Shealy, let's extrapolate for a minute to posture. Now, I remember when I was growing up, when I was very, very young, my dad would say, shoulders back, stand straight. I would hear it over and over, and I do. My shoulders are back, don't hunch over. Now, if you look at people today, young people specifically, they're hunched over. Mm-hmm. Their posture is bad. Now, they're blaming that they're calling that like the high technology posture, where they're looking at their iPhones, their iPads, their computer devices, and they're hunched over. But is it that, or is it the fact that they're really depressed and they're just slouching because there's no reason to have a good posture in their own minds because the outlook is so poor? Is that possible, Dr. Shealy?
Oh, absolutely. No question about it. And it also is down to one of those things that we've talked about off and on every time practically, and that's self-esteem.
Yeah.
If you don't think adequately, just not well, but adequately of yourself, then you tend to slump.
That's such an important point, Dr. Shealy, because I think right now there are adults listening. They're saying, wait a minute. They're talking about my son, my daughter, my grandson, my granddaughter. Holy smokes. I think they might have some depression. They might have low self-esteem. Maybe that's why they're not doing well in school. So what do we do about it, Dr. Shealy? How do we rebuild the self-esteem when we don't have a sense of purpose in our country? When we were talking about in the 1960s, we had some common goals. We were in the space race. We were trying to build technology to supposedly get to the moon. We don't have that national focus anymore. We don't even have any legitimate heroes anymore.
All true. And it all comes from the top down. Basically, I think we can say we haven't had, at least in 35 years, a national Congress or president who was standing up straight and being honest and, putting out an example of where we should be. And so if you don't have it there, it comes all the way from the top down.
Wow. That is so to the point. 35 years we have not had people whom we respect, people who we would like to emulate. We've got people like Barney Frank. Hey, who wants to be like Barney Frank?
Or Nancy Pelosi. Or Harry
Or
Reid.
Hillary Clinton. Or Bill Clinton. Or Barack Obama. Or Michelle Obama. We'll be right back. Dr. Norman Shealy's with us. And Dr. Shealy, there's a post that I'm just about ready to publish in the next couple of minutes that says, bad news for weekend couch potatoes. Men who are involved in do-it-yourself projects are 23% less likely to die young. What they're saying is those who are couch potatoes will die sooner than those of us 50 to 64 years old, and that's what this article's about, and I think it would include everyone, that if you actually do physical activity and you've got or projects, and that's what you do rather than watch television and become a couch potato, you'll actually live longer. Dr. Shealy, do you agree?
Agree. No question. We've done this for 50-plus years. It's amazing how it comes out every once in a while. Kenneth Cooper, the guy who developed the whole concept of aerobic exercise, demonstrated this, practically by the time I was finished medical school. And move it or lose it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Physical inactivity is as bad as smoking.
That was something I had on my list that I'm glad you mentioned it. But Dr. Shealy, before we get into tobacco, is it a combination of the mental processes that we go through? For example, in our house, in our farmhouse, I am deploying LED lighting. Now, I have to fabricate the LED lighting strips, and there's going to be hundreds and hundreds of feet of these strips that I'm going to put on board. So I had to engineer how I would suspend it from the ceiling. I had to figure out whether I wanted direct lighting or indirect lighting or reflective lighting. And then in order to do it, I have to saw, rip, sand, paint the boards, figure out a way of hanging them from the ceilings. Then I have to get on scaffolding to attach them to the vaulted ceilings, and then wire it. So I mean, it's not like, oh, we'll just slap this up. This is something that's going to take weeks to deploy throughout the home, and it means climbing up on ladders, climbing up on scaffolding. It involves physical work as well as mental work and engineering and calculations for the current loads and the amperes, the watts, and so forth. Is it mental as well? And this is what I do all the time. I mean, not just I'm just using this as one example, but I'm always involved in projects, and I know you are too. And is that what is helping keep us younger and healthier than people who are our same age?
Absolutely. No question about it. The other thing about it is, in order to be really active, you have to eat real food. You don't have the energy to be active if you're eating the average American junk food diet.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And I'd like to tell you that I have set my mental alarm to get up in the morning. As you said, I could get away from an alarm clock, and I don't know exactly how it works, Dr. Shealy. Maybe you could share that with us. But I know to get up on time. I know to do it, and it works. I mean, I can get it within a couple minutes. Now, how is that possible?
Well, I have been that way most of my life, I think, as long as I can remember. Mm-hmm. And it is partly expectation and programming. And I think if you are living a healthy life, you get some real daylight, sunlight, exercise, good food, your pineal gland, which is largely associated with controlling serotonin versus melatonin, it just gets set to a rhythm. It is a normal, healthy thing.
Mm-hmm. Okay. You mentioned tobacco. Now, in World War II, the tobacco companies somehow were able to convince the government that they would be able to provide free cigarettes to our soldiers in World War II. So the tobacco companies got together with the government. The government shipped free cigarettes donated by the tobacco companies to our servicemen overseas. And as a result, our servicemen came back from World War II absolutely, positively addicted to a weed we know as tobacco in the form of cigarettes, to which the government had attached a tax. So it was a win-win. The government got taxes through addiction. The tobacco companies got new customers through addiction. And my question to Dr. Shealy is about tobacco when we come back. Class, the Military Antiques Extravaganza in Monroeville, Pennsylvania is October 4th and 5th. Coming up. And it is a huge, huge hit. If you're interested in viewing, touching, feeling real memorabilia from World War I, World War II, the Spanish-American War, the Civil War, possibly even relics from the Revolutionary War, Japanese items, German items, Vietnamese items from the Vietnam era, the Korean era. If you'd like to meet people who were really there, veterans, if you'd like to talk to them firsthand, the Military Antiques Extravaganza. That's October 4th and 5th. I had made every intent. I have had every intent to be there. I will not be able to make it. And the reason is the person that I was planning to drive nonstop with is unable to make it. I feel really bad about this. I really, really wanted to go, and I'm hoping that I'm going to be able to make it to the next one next year. This one is the 29th, and it's at the Monroeville Convention Center. If you want to experience something that is truly amazing, the largest show in America of its kind, by far, themaxshow.com, themaxshow.com. Dr. Shealy's with us, and Dr. Norman Shealy you can get his newsletter by simply going to normshealy.com, NORMSHEALY.com. It's a free newsletter. I get it a couple times a week. I suggest you consider it. Your name is not going to be sold. Your email address is not going to be sold. It is just so you can receive the newsletter. It's free, and I wholeheartedly recommend it. Dr. Shealy, tobacco. We mentioned that tobacco was being promoted by the federal government during World War II. We got our soldiers and servicemen addicted to it. They came back to the United States addicted to tobacco. They ended up ultimately paying taxes on it, so it was a win-win for the government and the tobacco industry. Here's my question. We talk about tobacco being bad for you. We've heard that for years and years and years. So here's the question that I've never heard asked. Is there any positive benefit to smoking tobacco products? Is there any positive benefit medically at all? Is there a single one?
No. No. It's disease and early death all the way. It's that simple.
Okay. So when a person smokes a cigarette for the first time, he or she has a reaction. Their facial expression changes. It's like, oh my gosh, this is rough stuff. Their body reacts, saying, "Don't even think about it." They force it down. They become addicted, and so the bottom line, from what I'm hearing, is there is no positive medical benefit whatsoever.
You're right. I mean, it is disease and early death all the way.
And you've experienced that in your family?
Right. My father and five total of 6 brothers all died between 48 and 54 years of age. They all smoked. One brother who didn't lived to be 80. I mean, that's the simple, straight-up thing. Smoking in general, 1 pack a day shortens your life by only 7 years, but of course you might have 10 or 15 years of illness before you die. 3 packs of cigarettes shortens your life by about 18 years, about the same as being 40 pounds or more overweight.
You know, as you were saying this, I was thinking about the poisons and the toxins, and I keep referring to this meeting that we had last Thursday, and it's so ingrained in my mind how we are doomed by these people that we elect to represent our interests. I'm going to mention a guy's name. One of the state representatives who was at the meeting, his name is Eric Burleson. And I said to Eric Burleson publicly, we were talking about introducing legislation in Missouri. I said, would you consider introducing legislation that would poison us? And he looked at me and he kind of scoffed like, what, are you kidding? He didn't say that, but his indication was, why would I introduce legislation that would poison us? And so I smiled and I said, okay. Then would you introduce legislation that would stop the poisoning of all of us in Missouri? Specifically, I'm talking about fluoride. And again, he scoffed. Dr. Shealy, I'm saying this is at the highest levels of the state government and the federal government, this poisoning of us by fluoride. these representatives are not willing to tackle the issue.
To be quite honest, Vince, are they willing to tackle anything reasonable?
Well, I mean, you would think these guys came to the Locke and Smith Foundation to the meeting because there's a very prestigious award that is presented to the representative who votes most constitutionally in Missouri. There's a first place award, and there's an award banquet, and it's a real formal thing. It's a wonderful thing, and I've been to one of these when they first started up. I've been to the awards banquet, and so these representatives are really interested in getting the award. And I said to him, if you want to win, all you have to do is this one thing. You will be Missouri's hero. All you have to do is sponsor a bill to get fluoride out of the water and stop the poisoning of all of us. You'll be a hero. Now, he wants to win the award, just like all these other politicians, but he is not willing to do the right thing. I can't believe it.
It's called testosterone deficiency.
Well, actually, you're right. You really are right, because a lot of these guys don't seem to have the physical indications of being men. What I'm saying is there's too many of us that appear to be weak and won't take a stand and won't make decisions. Back in the 1990s, calculators were introduced. 1970s. 1970s, calculators were introduced in schools, and those who could afford them back in the 1970s, and they were about $100 back then when they first came out. If you could get one wholesale, and it would add, subtract, multiply, divide, do square roots, and that was pretty much it in 1970. Well, since the introduction of calculators, Dr. Shealy, and then the subsequent introduction of programs on personal computers and cell phones, I think we've lost the ability to do mathematics as well as we used to in our heads and on paper. Now, if we look at that and we say, okay, we are now using computers to type. We don't write longhand very much anymore. So we're using computers with on-the-fly spell checking. So the computers can now correct our misspellings, and they can even correct our grammar because we're not too good at that. Do you think that we are losing our ability to communicate effectively and ultimately, as a result, possibly even lowering our IQs because we're not using our minds to the fullest extent that we used to?
You got it. I actually have predicted, even before all of the current stuff, I've been predicting for over 40 years that someday we're going to see changes in the physical brain at autopsy, that certain parts of the brain just got undeveloped or didn't develop properly because of watching television so much. It changes the way the brain functions. Instead of creating imagery, the images are created for you when you watch television. See, with radio or reading, you have to create an image of what, you are thinking or what it's causing you to think about. When you watch the image, it short circuits or bypasses the need to do that creativity. So in the long run, I think it's a decrease in creativity.
Well, that's where I was going, because if you look, there's an absence of creativity, innovation, new products that are developed from the ground, from the grassroots level. For example, it used to be there was a magazine called Popular Mechanics, and they would pay, I think, $25 for people who sent in innovative tips for doing things at the do-it-yourself level. So, for example, a really neat way of hanging a garden hose at the home, or a really neat plumbing tip, or an electrical tip, for wiring. Just really interesting ways that people could do things better, easier, smarter, faster, more efficiently for themselves. Those kinds of things have disappeared from the landscape, where people are interested in being innovative. It's just too much work. Let me give you an example. Last weekend, my son and I were replacing a diesel injection pump on a Dodge Cummins turbo diesel engine, a truck. And as during the process, a small keyway was dropped in the engine. And I said to him, "It's a big problem. This small keyway can get into the timing gears and absolutely destroy this engine." So I said, "I'll tell you what, let me think about this for a little bit." And because the solution to fixing this and finding that keyway is to take off the timing cover of the engine, which means taking off the fan, which means taking off the serpentine belt, which means taking out the radiator, which means taking or moving away the air conditioning condenser, which means taking the front bumper off the car or the truck. This is like a 10, 15, 20-hour job. I think there's a better way. So I made a tool. I took a piece of copper wire, Romex wire, stripped it out, the bare copper, and epoxied a very small magnet that I took out of a computer hard drive, a very small magnet that was about a quarter the size of a dime. Put it on there.
You beat me to it. I was thinking of putting a magnet down.
Well, Dr. Shealy, that's the kind of stuff that we don't do anymore. And where did I get that tip? Probably 40 years ago by reading Popular Mechanics. And some of those tips, stick in our minds. We need to get back to that. And let's talk about how we're going to do it and what tools we need to throw overboard to make sure that we get there. Dr. Shealy, normshealy.com. Class, very quickly, I'd like to suggest that if you're on the East Coast, the Military Antiques Extravaganza, that's October 4th and 5th. I suggest you consider going. It is in Monroeville, Pennsylvania, themaxshow.com, themaxshow.com. I had every intention of being there. I will not be able to make it, but I really would like to be there. My plan is to make it next year. So the Military Antiques Extravaganza, it's the best military show I've seen. And themaxshow.com, October 4th and 5th. And if you're in the West, I suggest you consider going to the National Western Complex, which is the Emergency Preparedness, Survival, and Food Storage Expo. Now, that is that's the expo of my friend Ron Douglas, and it's called the Self-Reliance Expo. Now, I don't recommend expos, but I do recommend this one. I know Ron Douglas. He has been to many of our expos to see how we do what we do, and I've talked to him on many occasions. I like his expo, and I did a live remote from there when he was out in Texas. So I suggest you consider that one. That's October 4th and 5th, the Self-Reliance Expo. Dr. Norman Shealy's with us, and I suggest you consider normshealy.com if you'd like to be involved in understanding the latest tips and techniques in medicine. You can get a free newsletter. I get one, and he will not sell nor distribute your email information to anyone. Dr. Shealy, how can we get our creativity back? That creativity that you had when you were young. I mean, we were learning how to be creative when we were young. We still have it. I learned it when I was young. I still have it. But it seems that many young people don't. They don't change their own oil in their vehicles. They don't know how to service their own vehicles. They don't work with wood. They don't work with metal. They don't have soldering irons. They don't build Heath kits. They don't have chemistry sets. What do we do, Dr. Shealy?
Well, I suggest they start by getting rid of their iPads and iPods, and use phones, cell phones only for urgent needs. That would be a good beginning. And then secondly, I suggest that they restrict television to, maybe 2 or 3 hours a week at the most. That gives them all kinds of time to get back into themselves and think again and learn to be creative. I mean, it's crucial to me. I suggest they also take up some kind of physical activity. I don't care what it is, as long as it's, safe and you go into it gradually and increase your activity gradually. And then finally, I suggest you eat real food, because when you eat junk, that poisons the brain also. Monosodium glutamate, trans fats, all the junk that's in a great deal of processed foods, all the fast food restaurants. Avoid those things. It's the beginning of a revolution.
Well, I've got to agree with you on all counts. And I had the opportunity. I was early for a meeting, and I decided to pop into a McDonald's I'd never been into just to see what's going on. I was the thinnest person in the whole place. I mean, the employees were heavy, the patrons were heavy. Seriously, I think we need to stay away from those kinds of calories, whatever it is they put in there. I mean, I wouldn't want to call it food, but whatever it is that they sell, I think we ought to stay away from it. And they don't say that they serve ice cream; they call it something else. I forget what they call it, but
soft serve or something maybe.
That's it. Soft serve. I mean, how many people were involved in the committee to come up with that term, soft serve? Soft serve. Could I have some soft serve? Is that in a cone or is that in a dish? I mean, really? It used to be called ice cream when it was ice cream.
Junk by any other name, it's still junk.
I guess McDonald's is not going to be with us as a sponsor, Dr. Shealy.
And all of its clones.
Dr. Shealy, thanks so much for being with us. We'll see you next. Well, no, you're not going to be here next Thursday. Julie's going to be here, right?
Julie will be here next Wednesday. Yes.
Julie, have a safe trip, Dr. Shealy.
Thanks.
We'll miss you.
Have a good one.
Dr. Norman Shealy, USAPrepares.com, senior instructor. And if you'd like to contact him, normshealy.com, NORMSHEALY.com. Class, above all, honesty and integrity. What happens next is up to you.